Oh, it's me, Galen. I'm having a nightmare. Well, I'm not. I'm having a daymare. It's daytime. But here's the point. I'm having the light. It's everywhere. I've got bright sunlight streaming through the window, and I couldn't see. So I didn't know if it was dark or not. So I put the lights on all around, and I've got a little light over here shining in. I feel like Hank Marvin because I'm in the shadows. You'll only get that if you're over a certain age and from a certain part of the world. But if you don't get it, ignore it. It's all right. I'm going to talk to you today as part of my ongoing old man eats donuts has war game idea scenario. I did a video about me and my mate having a war game, having a donut and a coffee while we were war game, talking about books and things that tumbled into Charles II warfare and the East India Company and what did people wear. So there's two now following that. This one is, because one of the questions we asked ourselves is, why do the British Army wear red? And we've been wargaming more years than I care to remember, 50 odd years. And in actual fact, it isn't something that rolled easily off the tongue. But I've done some research. If you know all this, go and do something more interesting. Paint a figure. But you might not know this, so it might be interesting. And then the next one I'm going to do is all about the Dutch East India Company, who are abbreviated to the VOC. But I don't want to go into that too much, but I'll tell you about it later when I get to it. So, so why the British Army wears red? I had no idea. But I'm an English Civil War wargamer. So I knew that by the end of the English Civil War, certain units, royalist and parliamentarian, were wearing red coats. A lot of English Civil War uniforms are down to what does the colonel like? What's he prepared to buy you? What's his natural coat of arms? Like Newcastle with the lily whites. And a lot of the pictures of ordinary guys you see, you don't. What you see is the commander, and he's wearing an ornamental coat. And then people go, oh, well, he's wearing yellow. And that's a big green flag. They must have worn that colour. Assuming that those things that we now do were appropriate in the 17th century. And that's not proven to be true. So we do know there were units on both sides wearing red coats. They were wearing black coats and blue coats and green coats, whatever. So we know that. We also know that end of the Civil War into the Commonwealth period, the parliamentarian army begin to wear red. Why? Well, you've got to go way back into the mists of time. Ooh. The Egyptians, they use red dye. It's always been, red dye is really common. I watched a history guy, and he was on, and he was saying, there's a thing on the moment, BBC, King and Conqueror. Why does everybody on there wear grey and blue and brown and covered in dust? Even people of the middling sort had access to very bright colours. You might have worn cruddy clothes when you were at work, but you're going out, you got poshed up like we do. People didn't have just one set of clothes. Well, some of them did. Some of them had no sets of clothes. So the Egyptians knew how to make red dye. It's a documented fact. And they used some sort of plant root, the name of which escapes me. Now, this video, as is all my videos, is I do a lot of research and I take a lot in. But as an old man, it then goes in there and then it goes out of here. Like I've seen them big ball, puff ball, fungi things, and you hit them and they go poof. That's what my head's like. Every time that happens, memories and things I know go poof out there. So I'm old. This is going to get worse. The longer this YouTube thing goes on for me, the worse this is going to get. And I don't mention it very often, but I've got Parkinson's disease. this is going to put a real downer on life, is this. Prepare yourself, right? If you're of a nervous disposition, put your fingers in your ears. And when I've finished, I'll go like that to show you I've finished, right? You are a huge percentage more likely to get dementia with Parkinson's disease than you are in the ordinary population. So, my odds of getting Parkinson's have gone up. Something else to look forward to, isn't it? It's like a public information film, this. Now, I'm saying, I'm not saying, but if you watch me a lot, I'm not saying love me, I'm ill. What I'm saying is, that's an interesting thing. Well, you might not know that. You might not give a monkey's uncle. But I like to drop in snippets about having Parkinson's. Because this, to be honest, is really the only platform I've got. I'm not rich, I'm not famous, nobody cares. I'm never going to get interviewed. No one's going to invite me on to some show to talk about having Parkinson's. They couldn't care less about me. Nobody could. So it's down to you few folk, my one listener, who can now go, oh, well, I know something about Parkinson's. Or you might go, well, I already knew that. What you mustn't do is go, oh, isn't you brave? No, somebody give it to me. I didn't choose like a fireman to run into a burning building and save a kid. Some divine Herbert has gone, have some of that. And it's, oh. Yeah. So, my facts are a bit filtered by a manky brain. So, like, I don't know what the plant root is. I know they used cochineal as a red dye, and I know they added alum. Now, when I tell you I know something, take that with a massive pinch of salt, because not only do I have Parkinson's, and I'm old, I'm also arrogant and a bit thick. So, when I tell you something is a factical, odds are I'm wrong. The more certain I am of a fact, the more likelihood there is of it being absolute rubbish. Okay? But I'm going to say that's a fact. The Romans used red dye in their uniforms. I know not all Romans wore red. I know. But Roman soldiers, a lot of them wore red cloth tunics. So red has been used in warfare, going back, I'm going to say thousands of years. So it's not uncommon. But did you know the first unit in the British Army to formally wear red were inspired by Wales? Let that sink in for a minute. Not the big mammals with the big blowholes. Wales, the country, land of my fathers and all that, the Mabinogion. When Henry VII won Battle of Bosworth Field and defeated Richard III, he wanted to celebrate the fact, and he was a Welshman. His dad was Owen Tudor. He was Welsh. So he wanted to nod to that, and he came up with a new unit. I'm pretty sure they became the sort of King's Yeoman of the Guard type of guys. I don't know if that's the same as the Beefeaters, all sat out with the legs, and somebody went, hey, mind your Beefeat. I always get a bit mixed up with that. But anyway, they had a big long, they weren't called that, they had a big long fancy title. But I'm pretty sure that's who they became. But they wore red, and they still wear that sort of Tudory uniform, don't they? With the funny hats and the big doings, and the like their trousers. I do a lot of mime, a lot of interpreting wargame history through modern dance. I'm like the JLS of YouTube wargaming. Yeah, so they wore red, and they wore red because of Henry VII, or because of Wales. They're the sort of first unit, because that's, 1485? That's a long way away. So, even I know that. 1485. So these guys are wearing red. So that's before the English Civil War, but they were wearing red. Then you get some royal units. At the start of the English Civil War, I think the Queen's cavalry wore red. Somebody did who were posh. Well, the man or woman that commanded them were posh. I'm not saying the guys were. They probably were. They could ride horses. But anyway, I digress. They wore red. And by the end of the English Civil War, both units were wearing red. The new model army began to wear red to such an extent that at the end of the Commonwealth period, when we were fighting with France against the Dutch, at the Battle of Dunkirk, our troops wore red. And the Battle of Dunkirk was when British troops stormed an enemy position in the sand dunes and won massive acclaim. And it's the start of that history of, wow, them are good, them redcoats thing. Still very much pike and shot. Still, you could war game that game with an English Civil War army, but not use much pike. So we're looking at red. Somebody told me at the start of the English Civil War, about 3/4 of a unit would be pike, about 1/4 shot. And by the end of the war, about 3/4 were shot, about 1/4 were pike as it switches over. So that's where we're at. End of the parliamentary rule, the Commonwealth. Then Charles II comes back. This is him coming back. Here he is. Hooray! The King's back. Thing is, with King, he did all right. I don't know if he did all right. A bit odd. And his morals probably a bit lax by modern standards. That's the period me and my mate want to do in India. The East India companies of Britain, who were really pirate mercenaries without much of a uniform, against the Dutch, the VOC. And they were pirates. They called them the Compagnie, I think. My pronunciation of English is bad enough, never mind Dutch or French. But they weren't called pirates. But I suppose a bit like Elizabeth with her privateers when they went to harry the Spanish. And when we were doing it, we were bold, noble privateers. And when anybody else did it, they were dirty dog pirates. And it's the same sort of thing. The idea with the sort of Dutch East India Company was license a load of pirates, send them off to disrupt the trade of France and England, Britain. And then you can disclaim it. It weren't me, it's the pirates. And that's really the period we're going to war game. So the regular British Army will be wearing red. Now, I looked at we were talking about the Monmouth Rebellion. So I looked at the Monmouth Rebellion in uniforms, and I found a really good, there's a guy called, I know his last name is Coad, C-O-A-D. What the heck was his first name? Anyway, look up on YouTube, no, look up anywhere, Wikipedia, anywhere, Somerset Militia, and look images, and there'll be great images of the Somerset Militia. They're reenactors, but they've got big, long red coats on and huge yellow cuffs, massive. But that's what they wore. The Somerset Militia, and this guy Coad wrote a book about serving in the Somerset Militia, and he deserted and he went to join Monmouth and he got caught and he ended up being transported and dobbed. He has a heck of a life. So that's what they wore. So that sort of Monmouth period is perfect for our regulars. 1685, I am led to believe, I think. Poof! I hurt my nose then. I went like that, and I went like, I've probably done myself a mischief. The things I do for you in the name of art, I've physically injured myself. Yeah, so we were wearing red. That's why we were wearing red. Now, why red? Why not blue or green or yellow? Because red is, wait for it, drum roll, cheap. Simple as that. It's cheap. But not only is it cheap, it's brilliant. It's dead good. When you're dyeing with red, cochineal red, it is, and I'm going to use a technical term for dyeing, fast. If you dye something red, it stays red. You can have it out in the sun. You could be in India with it. You could be in the cold and the wet. You could be somewhere like Scunthorpe. Don't matter where you are, it's going to stay red. Okay? It likes being red. That's not true of other colours. They fade or they wear. Red doesn't. So red jackets look good for a long time. You can also dye thick woolly materials and felts, or you can dye linen, and they all come out red. Again, with other materials, other dyes, it's not quite the same. So red's a perfect one. Like I said, but number one is it's cheap. I think the fact that it worked well is a total coincidence. They just, well, that's handy. Yeah, well, it's lasting a long while as well. Ooh, saved a few bob on the old British Tommies. I know they weren't Tommies, shut up. Yeah, so we wore red, and we went on to wear red for a long time. I mean, even into First Boer War, end of the Sudan, there were even machine gun companies long after khaki had become the British colour. I'm not talking First World War late, but later than you would think, who were still wearing red. And there were still units that wore red going about their general day-to-day business. And when there was going to be any trouble, they changed to khaki. And there was a sort of a chunk in the middle, round about the Sudan, where some units, like Wolseley, he actually ordered for his men sort of field grey uniforms that looked like the ones the Germans went on to wear. And other commanders were wearing khaki at the same time as more old-fashioned commanders were wearing red. It was, you could find all three. My Sudanese army, I have all three. And then you got Egyptians who were wearing white and other bits and bobs. So it's got a nice variety of colour. So even in the First Boer War, the Boer units wore red. Didn't serve them overly well against Boer guerrilla fighters, which is really the final nail in the coffin of all those fuddy-duddies who went, oh, no, I was born red, I'm going to be wearing it. Well, you wear it with your big hat and see how long you last, because them lads know how to shoot. So you better know how to duck. And that, my darlings, is a potted history of why the British Army wore red. Apparently psychologically, standing with a big thousands and tens of thousands of your mates all in red feels good. And the enemy go, oh, redcoats. And it's got that psychological sting, which we knew about. You see reports and references to it through all sorts of history, that having the red coat meant something. So they kept it. They wanted it. They looked good. I still wear them today, don't they, on fancy parades? Well, good, fair play to them. May they always. I think they look fantastic. So that's there you are, in a nutcase, why we wear red. Ta-ra, Chuck.